The practice of meditation is basically to develop our understanding, developing the quality of knowing.
Thank you.
Normally we know things quite a lot, and within that knowing still we know only limited things that's required for ourselves to get by. There was one time that a Buddha was living in the forest. The forest was called the Simsapa. So in that forest, he picks up some leaves from the forest and told the monks, saying that between the leaves in my hand and the leaves in the forest, which one has got more? And obviously the monks said that in the forest there are more leaves compared to the leaves that you have in your hands. And then the Buddha said that similar way, the knowledge that he gained, there is like leaves in the forest. And he taught only handful of leaves. And this handful of leaves, it is what is getting very hard to understand. And when we look at the teachings, it looks very easy to remember, but still we cannot understand. We cannot comprehend yet. And so-called a handful of leaves. Think about the amount of leaves that if we have to learn, will be terribly difficult. Just to pass the one small exam is so difficult. And this handful of leaves. So that's why the practice of a mindfulness meditation is basically to understand this handful of leaves. That how this is working and why this is happening like that. So that's why in order to understand this handful of leaves, again, according to Buddhist principles, there are two ways to do it, which normally we do. And that's number one is called gathering information from other people or from the scripture. That's called a parato gosa. Normally we read the books, we listen the talks, and we gather information from visiting here and there, and like a window shopping, getting the informations about this and that. Like these days when we have to buy flight tickets, we go on so many websites like that, getting information until we find out the right one. And then we are satisfied with that. So that is called the information that we gather from others' knowledge, others' understanding, whether that is from books or listening and so on. And with that, oftentimes what happens that we become a person who holds the knowledge. So the knowledge that we have got, that we hold that knowledge, and we distill on that, investigate, and we become kind of a patent of that knowledge. So that's and we hold on to that and become a person who is a knower of it. Actually, that knowing, according to Buddhist principle, is just like a philosopher, getting the knowledge and ability to explain in a different forms, in different ways, in whichever ways, so that whoever is listening, they can feel that, oh, this is the one who knows about it. But that's not enough yet. But at least that gives us the right understanding. At least gives us what is right and what is wrong, so that we can make a right decision. Now, the second part from that knowledge that we have received, and we got the right understanding of that, then there is another one called yoniso manasikara. That is the it's a bit difficult to translate this is, but I prefer the translation called wise reflection. Sometimes it is also translated as a wise attention. And this wise reflection is that is required, so that the knowledge is not based on our perception, is not based on others' perception, and that is different to one another. But this wise reflection is something that will become common. Doesn't matter who walks on that path. Once you have rightly, wisely reflected and understand that one, then everybody will receive that. So that's why that is called the in a Buddhist term called the bhavana panya, wisdom that gained through the practice and the ability to wisely reflect on that. And that is the knowing, and that's a pure knowing. And here again there are two types of pure knowing. And this is again comes after you practice. Otherwise it's very we won't be able to understand that one. The one knowing, we put effort to know. And this is like you want to know the breath. So you have an effort, you have a desire, you put a desire to know that. And then you're knowing that this is breath coming in and going out. And same with the feelings. You penetrate your attention there, and then that's how you recognize the feelings. Same with our mind, that what I am thinking, so we penetrate, we focus on that. So there is an intention to know, there is a desire to know. So with that, the person who is desiring to know that, so there is an entity of this existence of a self there. So that's the knowing. And here, when we are practicing, much of the time we are using that one. I want to know. That's why we have an object to pay attention to, this breath. So we try to pay attention to the breath. I'm referring to the breath because at the moment we are concentrating on the breathing meditation. So that's why we are concentrating on, that's why I'm referring to the breath. So the breath becomes an object that we want to pay attention to. So there is an effort, there is a desire there. And then with that desire, we know that. And the same when we are practicing, as our mind settles, our mind becomes quiet, and then with that, what happens? Other things arises, right? The thought comes, the feelings comes, the sound distracts, and those moments, what happens? We either distracted, annoyed, or we simply ignore that. And there again, there is intention. I want. So there is intention involved there too. So with that intention, you know that object. And that knowing object is still bias. That's still a bias in that knowing. So that's still under your perception there. You want to know. And with that, because of that, your intention, it's always that goes into, you're forming into either liking or disliking based on your desire. So that's why whenever we are meditating, whenever sometimes a thought comes, experiences comes, and then those experiences, sometimes people will be translating it into a nice one, good one, desire to want it again. And also further on we'll be going into the stories of this and that, goes on to tell the stories and try to link with this and link with that. That is what, that's because you are putting yourself in there. You are wanting there. That's why that knowing is not the true knowing, according to the Buddhism, okay, in the practice of meditation. Whereas the true knowing is you become observer. You have no intention at all there. Whatever arises, and you're knowing that exactly what's happening there. You simply become observer, and then watching that things is being observed objectively. Yeah? And with that, what happens is this objective observation, there is no forming, no creation, and also you are not conditioning it. You are not conditioning it. So this just comes and it just goes. And with that, what happens is that our mind becomes in a state of very alert, as well as this what's called not connected. There is a gap between. It's like a gap, but not a gap. It's like a, you know, you see it and then touch it, and then it just bounce back, but you still know that one, and then that simply goes off. And that's called understanding the mind matter in the practice. And that's how it comes. Even like in that moment, suppose you're watching the breath, and here the breath becomes the object that you're observing objectively, where there is no effort at all. Okay, no effort at all. You're just watching there, and as a result of that, watching this breath, what happens that it comes in a state whether there is a breath or not. Right? And that's why when there is no breath, that breath becomes so subtle at that time. Quite often people find frightened, and then there will be a thought arises saying, should I give up my meditation and ask the teacher what's happening, or should I move myself, that whether I'm still alive? And that sort of a thought comes. Okay? So that's simply because we are still conditioning ourselves to establish somewhere something in that way. Right? Whereas when we are practicing, the more we know the true nature, what happens that it just become observer. That's there, and you become observer. And then this moment, it is like our mind works in a way. You're turning the page, and then each page you turn, you know that an exact you know fully that page, and then you're not attached to it. You just move on, move on. And it comes, rather than looking at this page, you're coming back to look at the mind itself, who is looking the pages. And there's no intention to open the pages. It's just automatically happening. So that comes. So that's why this is the moment, it's called observation. Become an observer. And that's why, if you remember, I normally use the simile of like sitting at the bank of the river, watching the river flow. And that river flow is pure water river flowing. Nothing is involved there. And that knowing, doesn't matter who practices. Once you arrive there, then everybody will experience the same. But until then, we always have this and this and this and this. So we are still occupied by the perceptions, occupied by our feelings and so on. Okay? So the practice of a mindfulness meditation, that's why it's developing this knowing, not from the knowing that we are receiving the information and knowledge that we have collected and we have investigated on and analyzed on it, not only that, but ability to wisely reflect and also finding from the practice. And that is, again, without any intention there, but pure knowing there. Right? And that knowing is something we have to look for. Okay? And that we can develop by simply developing the observation of this. Right? So with this, let's practice. Sitting comfortably. Bring your attention to the moment here and now. You may spend some time observing the body sitting. Awareness of your sitting body, and relax. So in order to gain the concentration that we've been practicing, you can use the counting the breath, following the breath, fixing by having a connection with a certain points, certain area of the body, simply to gain the concentration. The mind is not distracted, quieten the mind, and with that, as you settled, in this moment, observing the breath. So I believe at this time you have developed the sign of that breath in a special place that you have decided to work on. So if not developed yet, then going back to develop, cultivate and maintaining, repeatedly doing it until the sign comes. So at this time, if you have this point of attention, whether that's the breath in your nose or in your belly, working with that. So settling and grounding yourself on it. Fixing your attention there, or fixing the breath there. And now just observing it. So this stage, our intention is to be with the breath and observing the breath, whereas due to our hindrances are still active, it is very common that mind will drift away to the other things. And when our mind drifts away to the other things, whether the sound that you hear, whether the other sensation that appears in your body, whether the thought arises at that time, simply observing that too. And here we're not spending much time with that, just leave that there and then back to breath observing. Meanwhile, when we are observing this breath, making sure that you have a full attention on the entire breath. And here we are not following the breath, but simply standing at the designated desired state, like the breath in your nose or in your belly, and watching the entire breath that goes in and goes out. So continue practicing. So this is the Anapanasati, and we've been working on the first tetra. That's the kayasankhara satipatthana. That is the first four. That is one first tetra. Yeah, it has got the 8 jnanas, right? 8 knowledges. That is called 8 knowledge. And last week I was explaining on the 4th one, which is he trains himself. I will breathe in calming bodily formation. He trains himself. I will breathe out calming bodily fabrication. And unfortunately last week just managed to cover, I hope, on the sankhara, the fabrication only. So on that fabrication explained or discussed in different aspects of it. Anything that you want to add on, or anything you have a question on that before we move on to the fabrication or sankhara?
If I'm honest, it's not clear to me what is meant by bodily fabric. I know you explained it last week, and I've revisited it, and I'm like, no, I'm not sure.
Last week I didn't explain kayasankhara yet. I was explaining only sankhara, the fabrication, last week. Although I touched the kayasankhara, and when I was talking on kayasankhara, and I thought that better give a broad meaning of a sankhara first on the fabrication. So that's why we spend the time on the fabrication, right? So the sankhara in a different forms, different ways, or maybe different aspects of it.
How many types of sankharas?
How many types do you think?
As far as I know, there are 3.
What are they?
That can you remind me of the first one? That didn't come.
That's a kayasankhara.
No.
Punyabi sankhara.
Punyabi sankhara, apunyabi sankhara, aninjabi sankhara.
Yeah.
So this punyabi sankhara means that we with the punya. Apunyabi means the unwholesome, and aninjabi means the meditative mind's dhyana.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the arahants? When the arahants, when the thought process comes, what are their thought process called?
That they don't have that thought processes. They call quietened the abhisankharas, right? So there's not only 3 sankharas there. These are the 3 sankharas, very common thing. Then there are other sankharas or other formations, okay, sankharas there. And among that, there also comes the khanda sankhara, okay, and then comes the kilesa sankhara and abhisankhara as well. And a person who has fully understood, quietened all the sankharas, okay, and that person will not have further sankharas. So in that case,
kriya.
That's a kiriya chitta, okay. And this is the person who has attained the liberation. That is a person. That is a person called a person who has quietened all the sankharas. So there's basically khanda sankhara been quietened, and then the kilesa sankhara been quietened, and particularly the abhisankhara, which is more defilements. Okay? All the defilements, mainly the greed, hatred, delusion, and all the other anusaya kilesas, been quietened. And in that state, the arahats, they will just have the ditya seeing, just the seeing. So there won't be any further punya, apunya, or ananya, nothing. Okay? So there will be no wholesome creation, there will be no unwholesome creation, and there will be no further creation to be in further other existence. Okay? So that is the state they will be. Whereas for us, we are always creating further and further in a different forms. And when we talk about, now you mentioned that, so in this formation of the sankhara, so when we talk about the punya sankhara, so create wholesome formations, and this wholesome formation again now coming back to the basic principles of, it's called the sila visuddhi, right? Which is the purification of the precepts. Right? So sila visuddhi comes there, right? And in that sila visuddhi, basic thing is the coming to the 5 precepts, right? So not to harm, not to kill or harm, or not to steal, not to have a sexual misconduct, and not to lie, and not to lie, up to not to lie. Okay, that comes in and then after that there are other 3 for the mental reactions. It's called kusala kamma padas. So from a physical action, what we do, panatipata, killing or harming. Second, adinadana, stealing. Third, kamyasumicachara, that is sexual misconduct. Okay? So this is unwholesome. Okay, we're talking about unwholesome fabrications. Okay, so killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. So these are the 4 from the bodily action that we do, unwholesome actions. Okay? And in terms of the mental, speech, okay, that's called vachi sankhara, right? So the verbal fabrication, and that's in a short form, that's the one, that's don't lie. Okay? Okay, so that is unwholesome. Okay? Vachi sankhara. And then the third one is called mano sankhara, right? And that is, what are they? You remember? 3. Kusala karma padas. 3. As akusala karma padas. So 3. There are. The number 1 is covetousness, avidya. Covet, to want to have some others' belonging, want to have, and ill will, a resentment, vyapad. And then the last one is the vichariti, the wrong understanding. Okay? So these are the actions that we normally do in a negative way, but in the same time, positive way is not to kill, right? I'm just messed up now.
No, avoid
You just jump back to the first one.
Yeah.
Avoid everything.
Yeah. So the first one is a wholesome fabrication.
Yeah.
So that is not to do all these what I have
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And then unwholesome is to avoid or doing it.
Doing it.
Okay. So like that, and that is the making further on. Right? So creating, and in that creation, basically we are making something to be. Right? We are making karma, the action. So once we have created, the reaction is there. Right? So the reaction will come. The result will come that we are bound to receive it. Right? So that's called the formation, and that's why we are always doing something. We are always thinking something, always creating something, and that's simply because Buddha used the word asutawa, because we haven't understood yet. If we have understood, we will not be doing those things. We will be stopping there. Arises, know, and stop. Right? So that's what there is in Sabbasava Sutta, in Sutta discourse number 2 in the Majjhima Nikaya. It says, knowing, seeing, and then wisely reflecting. So the moment when you know what's happening, right, and seeing that this is happening, and not only knowing, not only seeing is enough, you have to wisely reflect on that this is happening. Then what happens that you will be stopping there. You will be not committing further on. You're not making further on. Right? So that's why the mindfulness is needed. That's why we need to be mindful of every action that we do. Whether that's thinking, thinking is a bit harder one, mostly start from the physical action, and speaking is the basic one. But for the person who has been practicing meditation for a certain period of time and ability to understand this, then they will be more onto the mental state, because all the physical action and the verbal action are the result of what we think. Okay? So if you are mindful, the way the thought forms, you become aware of that. And you can decide, choose to react or choose to stop there. And that stopping is basically after you have understood the cause and effects of your reaction. So then what you are doing, you are not forming anymore, you are stopping there. So you are stopping there. And basically the practice of a mindfulness meditation is to learn to stop further action onto the thing. And in order to satisfy us, that's why we were told to do good things first. Avoid the bad things, do good things first. So with that good thing doing, what happens is that our mind gradually becomes the malleable one. And eventually it comes to the stage that even these good things will be gone. Because even wanting to do good things is also a form of an extreme. We are making something up, doing something up, making. Fabrication is there. That's why there is always rebirth coming. Bhava comes, rebirth coming again and again. That's why there are two extremes at the moment these days we can see. Number one, they do good things, hoping to be reborn in a good place, or to gain good fortune. And this part of the extremes, mostly traditional Buddhists in a way, just to categorize it into, doesn't mean only Buddhists, anybody. They are doing good things simply to reborn in heavenly realms or have a good fortune. And they disregard the rest of other practices. So purely onto that, most of the maybe Buddhist is not good one, but the religious one, religious person. And then another extreme that these are not important, just the practice, just the practice so that I can be liberated. So that's another extreme going on here too. And whichever extreme you go, it won't lead to the success. It won't. And obviously, the first extreme of doing good things to gain the a good life or good fortune, that's not leading to the liberation anyway, because your intention is not there. Okay? Whereas the second extreme, in order to gain the benefit and in order to get the advanced practice or understand, you have to have the base, giving. Otherwise you can't. So giving is a part, okay, of
letting go.
letting go and then developing this part of the practice. Right? Letting go, you cannot let go if you haven't learned how to give. Right? So if you learn to know how to give, then the practice has become much easier. There will be no I want. It will be just there watching, knowing, seeing. Right? So that's why the giving is one thing that's very fundamental part of the practice if you really want to develop your practice of meditation. Otherwise, no, you can't. Like sometimes people give just the sake of a giving. So that is the pure giving. And then other times people give just to maintain their name, maintain their fame, to be loved or something like that. And then that's not true giving. And after giving that, if you meditate, you cannot go anywhere because you are very selfish. With having a selfish, you cannot develop. So that's why it goes together. You have to merge, working together. Only then this will grow. This will grow. The practice will grow. And when this practice grow, then we will be able to understand furthermore how things form and why we are forming things. And what is the reason behind it. So that's why as we develop our practice, even the good things, we will see that, oh, this is the main root that I have to be reborn again and again and suffering again and again. And think about it. You've been working so hard, practicing so hard to be liberated, and somehow these good things take you to rebirth somewhere again. And in that place, suppose you're reborn, maybe coming back to the human world, and maybe let's say you're reborn in the Buddhist community with lots of people practicing meditation, but somehow condition wasn't good. Will you be able to continue? No. Right? You'll be probably doing something bad again. You cannot make sure that 100% you will be doing good things another one, although you have done, suppose you have done this life. So what happened? You are again going back to the same formation, another creation with that. So that's why the person who has fully understood, then that person will even disregard this good formation. Okay? Like that. So a person who has attained the liberation called Sabba Sankhara Samatho, right? All the sankharas being quietened, and that person is known the liberated one. So that's why a person who has attained that, there will be no creation of even this good or bad, or forget about the reborning in other heavens. Okay. So this is the concept of the formation. Okay. Now coming back to the sutta. So kayasankhara here, we have to remember. I mentioned there are two kayas. Remember, two types of kayas. So breath body and then a flesh body. Okay. And within that breath body and a flesh body, we also have to remember either the breath body or the flesh body, that is still known as the material body, made of material thing. So there's another body which is called the Namakaya. In English, maybe a translation would be mental body. Mental body, And this mental body, again, it also includes the mental formation as well. And that's also known, comes into the Namakaya. So in the Namakaya, actually this is not related here, but just to give you a brief idea, this Namakaya, if you look at the khanda, we call khanda, the 5 aggregates. That's a Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Okay, so there's a matter, feeling, perception, formation, and then the consciousness. Among these 5, leave the Rupa, the first one, material, so feeling, perception, formation, and Vijnana, the consciousness. These 4 are known the Namakaya, or the mental body. Okay, I don't know the translation. Okay, the mental body, and along with that mental body there comes the mental formation, which is, again, we will discuss later on the 7th. But here the kayasankhara, bodily formation. Here bodily formation is talking about the 2 things here. The one is the breath, and another one is the body. Okay? So when we talk about the breath, it is talking about the 4 elements, how the 4 elements forms a breath. Okay? So the 4 elements are, remember? What are they? In English. We have a gentleman here who doesn't know yet.
Solid.
Well,
Prithvi is the
Solids, the viscosity, the air and the heat.
okay. Earth, water, fire, and wind.
That's easy.
Okay. So these 4 elements, when comes together, it forms one element, that is the breath. Okay? And that's the same applies to the body too, the flesh body. Okay, this flesh body also has got these 4 elements too, and this is how it formed. And here, this is kind of a physiological study, but in the practice of meditation, we are not going to deeper like that. In the practice, what we are concentrating according to the Anapanasati, when we are practicing, this breath is making this body, right, to form, and then meanwhile this body is making this breath to be formed. So its interrelationship is going on there. How the breath formed, and then the breath is again making this body to form. Right? So that's why on the third one, which we discussed, Sabbakaya Patisanvedya, I explained about that one, the relationship that we have to understand. And how we can do that, how we can understand that. So the basic level to understand is, when we are not practicing meditation, our breath is very rough, coarse. Our body also feel very coarse, very heavy, very maybe heavy is the best one. Okay, heavy like that. But when we practice meditation, what happens that as this breath settles, and we become mindful of this breath becomes subtler and subtler, and with that subtleness of the breath, it settles the body down as well. Okay? And when the body settles, the breath settles too. So this interrelationship is going on. And this good simile is given, that is, suppose you are running so fast. You're running so fast. And at that time, what happens? Your concentration is only on the breath, not on your body. You're concentrating in your breath. Taking the long deep breaths just to... At that time, you are paying attention to the breath. And with that taking the breath coming in like that, eventually the body settles. So, now here, breath is forming the body to settle down. Right? And at the same time, this incoming and outgoing breath that we are taking is possible because of the body functioning it to have it. Right? Functioning it to make it. Right? So like that. And this is the creation gradually settles, and that this is, you can observe as you practice meditation, what happens that the breath becomes subtler and subtler and subtler and subtler. It comes at the stage that if you remember, I was guiding, or before the guiding today, mentioned that the state comes that there is no breath. Yeah? And when it comes to there is no breath, not only the breath that you can't see, there is no body too. You cannot observe. You feel like there is no body either. Right? So that's a ability to quietening. So that's why it's called quietening, right? Or tranquilizing the bodily formation. And this is possible only when you are fully absorbed in. So that's why today's instruction I mentioned that you become an observer, because you have settled your awareness onto the one point. You have adapted. So that's called having a sign to practice. Right? So along the few weeks I was explaining to develop that connection, to have the settled mind, counting, following, right? Observing, fixing and connecting, and then having a sign. Having the sign here basically means you are settled in one place. Right? In one place. So you have to be sure that you're really working on that. Then you are settled in there. And when you're settled, your concentration settled on that one particular place, then this sign is not just having that sign of this is the object that I'm working on. You have to develop or maintain your awareness on there too. When you are maintaining awareness on there, then you will be able to recognize the no breath state, no body state. So suppose you're meditating, and there will come a state that mind, body and this breath becomes so subtle, as nothing is there, and you become empty. And sometimes you want to move your fingers to see whether I'm still there. Another time you just want to open your eyes. Another time the thought will come, shall I ask, or shall I open my eyes and see what's going on? Like that. So these states will come, and that's basically forming. See here, forming, coming in that state. Now if there is this stage come, and we can maintain our the awareness settled without interrupting, so in that case actually we are about to enter into the absorptions. And that absorption state, what we are doing is we are subsiding all the 5 hindrances. With that subsiding hindrances we are gaining more the concentration. And with that concentration, concentrated mind, what we are getting is the indriyas, the balas. So strength, our confidence develop, willing to work harder. Okay, this is working. Now I need to practice more. So the faith develop more. Practice becomes firm, and then awareness becomes even more greater. Concentration firmly establishes there, and that's how you will also gain the further knowledge, the wisdom. So that's how it comes in that state. They're coming together there. Now, in order to come these factors, so as I said, we have to purify the precepts, sila visuddhi. Have to perfect that one. Then these stages will appear, and with that we can further on to the next stage. Okay, so I think that's enough for today. All right. Anybody wants to share or put anything on? Anything? No?
If you're going towards like samatha, you wouldn't like vidarsana. You don't concentrate on the 4 elements over there, on that.
No.
No, it's just cool.
So if so, we have to remember up to the Chittanupasana, so 12, okay, up to the 12 stages, you can practice samatha and vipassana anywhere.
Anyway, okay.
Okay, but from the 12 onwards, only vipassana, no samatha. Okay, and then in order to practice the now take away the samatha, and if we are practicing the vipassana, then what happens? Even let's say the first one, breathing in and breathing out. In that case, breathing in and breathing out, what we are doing is we are not focusing anywhere, but ability to understand that this breath is not permanent. So seeing the impermanence of the breath. Okay? So once you practice in this way, then the rest will come. And then when we are practicing this in a vipassana method or insight way, there again, although we may do the counting, but each counting is not for the quietening the mind, but the wisdom. Okay? So there, if I remember correctly from the path of purification, Vishuddhimagga, they are given, I think there are 7 stages to practice in first one, to practice the vipassana way. Okay? But the basic way, a basic term is that knowing that this breath is impermanent. Not sticking or not trying to force yourself to gain the samadhi, but it's another way, it's like open-minded. I think there is another monk, I forgot his name, he teaches called mindfulness open awareness. So that is that way. So it's always being alert and then not sticking or not looking for it. Like that. Although you have this breathing in and out as a foundation, but not specifying where, but knowing the impermanence on that. That's why if we practice according to the Mahasi Sayadaw, I feel more comfortable to practice on the vipassana. This Anapanasati, mostly it's easier go through the samatha way than the vipassana way. Because if we go vipassana way, then that's so long, it can confuse us like that. Okay? So, but the Mahasi Sayadaw, that one from the beginning, so it's a vipassana way. You're not stick with the rising falling. The rising falling is just the foundation. You watch, but in the meantime, whatever other things comes, you attention there. So, and that basically to recognize that these are impermanent. Okay. Okay. Right. Anything? Huh? Okay. So in that case, let's practice loving kindness meditation to finish off. By the way, anybody, those who taken the book, have you read? I saw you reading.
Not completely.
No, I mean, no, it's okay. It's not easy one.
No. May take a while.
Okay. Well, if you have a question or just okay. All right, let's practice loving kindness.